right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the team who are helping arrange today's visuals and our sponsors. I know it's 5 p.m. and we have a pretty rich topic at hand, but I think you'll all be inspired by the incredible panel who we have today. Let me begin by introducing all of them, although frankly, none of them do need introduction. To my left, my good friend and wonderful journalist, Caroline Faraj, 30 years of experience in the regional and global journalism scene, a CNN vice president and the editor-in-chief of CNN Arabic. Plestia Alaqad, renowned young journalist with 4 million followers on Instagram, whose coverage from Gaza inspired and captivated us, and now a student at the American University of Beirut. And Professor Tarek El-Ariss, who is a tenured professor at Dartmouth, currently on sabbatical at the American University of Beirut, prolific author of half a dozen wonderful books, and a friend to us all. Please give them a big round of applause. So I guess we can begin with a simple question. What is the truth? Or as we say in Arabic, old Bedouin Arabic, أين الحقيقة? It's a tough question. I think those of us who were born before the year 2000 probably thought the truth was a pretty finite, simple, and well-defined thing. But in the current political and social and economic environment, basic facts are being challenged. People are looking at the same thing and coming up with a half dozen different interpretations. Let's begin with the most simple question, starting with you, Tarek. What is the truth?
Oh my God, this is a huge question. I mean, I think the truth is what everyone thinks is the truth, or what you think everyone thinks is the truth. But of course, that is very contested. And the truth is, I mean, even when we talk about language, I mean, language says, you know, the boy came here at this hour and did this. I mean, this is the power of language, of representation, to capture something that happened in reality and to say that what happened, this event, is actually true. So language has the power to capture something that happened in the world. So this is one way of having truth. And that's why language and representation, be it language as words, but also visual language, the camera, have that ability to capture something that happened, and everyone says, we accept that language, and therefore we believe that what happened actually happened. Now, of course, the camera, someone invented the camera, and someone is shooting from a certain angle, and then the language, of course, we use the language, and this language versus that language, we have many languages and many ways of using languages, and this is where the truth becomes a little more shaky and less certain. But if we want to define the truth, it is about representation of something that happened in real life, and that's, of course, the realm of the media and journalism who do this thing for us. So,
thank you.
Growing up, I used to think the truth is everything that my parents tell me, and I never question anything they say or everything that my teachers in school say. But now, especially in the social media and technology era and with the rise of AI, there are plenty of videos that are AI and I mistake them to human videos. So I'm like, okay, I actually need to fact check and to double check everything I see. And as a journalist, I saw how there's like a lot of propaganda and how the truth can be twisted. So to know what the truth is, you need to always fact check and double check and question everything you're seeing.
Okay, now I'll tell you something, and I would read it for you first.
From ChatGPT.
Different Caroline Faraj. As you know that we do lots of training, and in one of the trainings that we did, we spent a whole day just identifying what the truth is. And I can summarize it in the following. Truth is the fact that remains after every source is checked. As you know, we have to have a minimum of 2 well-informed sources. That's a basic thing for us anytime you see any story. every angle challenged. زي ما تفضل الدكتور, everything needs to be challenged. You cannot just take things for granted, and every assumption stripped away. In a nutshell, even with whatever the doctor was just mentioning, it's a truth as far as I know now, because you can never tell if this is 100% truthful unless you're the one who's attending there and doing it yourself. That's why if you recall, many people actually built their own thesis even and doctorate on the so-called truthful information, and they discovered after 20 years, 30 years that it wasn't truthful. And that's why we really need to keep challenging whatever is known as truth. And if I believe is truthful, and as you mentioned, if there's an accident, this is what we also train young journalists. If there's an accident happening and I saw something on social media, maybe this person will say that there was no casualties because he only saw it from this angle. But if I talk to somebody else from the other angle, they will say, well, we saw a woman injured. So this is a different story. So that's why you have to have it at least from two well-informed sources and keep the door open for more information to come that might be also truthful, and I underline might.
The common thread in what all three of you have mentioned is fact-checking, validation, multiple sources who will confirm or not confirm the truth. The problem is we're living in a world and in a media environment where you're not up only against human beings who would disagree with your point of view, and many of those human beings don't actually care about the facts anymore. They've invented the truth in their own mind, and they will try to manufacture facts to prove their point. I mean, if you look at the supporters of a certain president of a superpower, right? It's like you can't engage them in factual discussion anymore because they've made up their mind on a particular quote-unquote truth, and they're sticking to it. So how do we, as 30-year-long journalists of the future, voices of a young nation, professors in academia, how do we approach a situation where, while we've defined truth as being anchored in fact, an increasing number of people don't care about the facts?
I mean, you know, I'm very interested in you know, what's called the Enlightenment Project, basically how knowledge was produced at some point in history, and mostly in the 18th, 19th century, and mostly in Europe. And we created institutions that we came to trust, institutions that produce the books we teach at schools, that teach us what is proper journalism, what is proper editing, what is the right language to use, what are the right verbs. So we don't agree on that anymore. So there is something about that social and political contract that has collapsed. And that and maybe for rightful reasons, because that model was biased in a European way or in a colonial way, and of course these are very important critiques. But what comes out from that collapse is that everyone now is coming and saying, this is my truth and I hold on to it. Because there's nothing universal that brings us all together that we all believe in and makes us feel we have a common language and a common system of truth. And this is where we are stuck. And I think with the new media, and this is something I wrote about in the book on Arabic culture in the digital age, in the new media, you have presence, you have instantaneity. So here I am filming live from the event, and that is truthful in and of itself.
Doctor, sorry, but even the new media that you're mentioning here, those who are running these platforms, they decided that I don't care, and I'm not going to do fact-checking. So it's a responsibility that we have all to share. There's nothing called fact-checking is the responsibility of a journalist anymore. It is a responsibility of all. How many of you works in media? Can I see hands? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I see hands? Okay.
One.
So I know this is part of your bread and butter to learn how to do fact-checking, but I have to tell you that it is the responsibility of all. We share all the responsibility. We need to question everything we see all the time because these platforms do not have fact-checking. So therefore, you really need to know how to fact-check. You really need to understand that AI can really use your name and voice and everything, and you'll be surprised. Even AI cannot verify sometimes the fake AI. Right. So this is a long story. It's a burden, but we have to take it. If we don't take it, then we have to say goodbye to everything.
Fair enough. I'm not sure I heard an answer from you guys yet, but we'll get back to it. Plestia, if we can go back to the work you did on the ground in Gaza. When you were talking to the world, showing the facts and showing ostensibly the truth, in your mind, were you speaking to part of the world or all of the world?
I'm always speaking to everyone who wants to listen.
Right. So let's play this out in a scenario where imagine you are an Israeli watching your videos. And you're talking about the suffering, the tragedy, the genocide. But if you're the Israeli, you're thinking, that's not true. How would you talk to that Israeli if he were to be sat down in front of you? How would you approach a situation where you were there on the ground in the middle of the rubble?
Israelis aren't really my target audience. Imagine living a genocide, surviving it, and documenting it, and having to prove to Israeli people that this happened.
That's not my point. That's not my point.
Well, it is my point.
No, I appreciate it. But my question to you is, if you were to have a dialogue, because I asked you in the beginning, you won't have a dialogue.
Saying.
All right. Well, that's what I think is an interesting point that needs to be raised. If we're living in a world where everyone is willing to quickly ignore the facts, right? That's a reality that we're living in. So while it may be...
Why do we need to accept this reality?
No, we don't. But the question that I'm trying to get at is how do we solve it? And I'd like to propose to all three of you a question. Maybe we should perhaps not allow the facts to get in the way of the truth. And maybe the answer is around dialogue. Maybe it's around not truth, but righteousness.
But again, sorry.
Go ahead.
But dialogue, you have to be part of a system that I'm saying has collapsed. You see? So you have to have buy-in into a system of truth within which we have dialogue. We speak a common language. But if we don't believe in that system anymore, then it's very hard to have dialogue.
Exactly, and there's no debate or dialogue that is valid when children are being slaughtered. There's a certain point where dialogue and debate, there's no space for them anymore.
And the core issue should be always fact. The facts and the truth are hand in hand. That's the way I look at it. But also don't forget that if somebody is not listening by choice and they decided they don't want to listen to the messages coming from this part of the world, you will find that a lot of people are hearing it. So don't underestimate the young people. I have full trust in the young generation because they are the ones who are really able to make the move and make the change. Mm-hmm. And that's why we heard lots of voices to many issues that we went through, suffering that we went through, and we saw it on television. Definitely what I saw on television is different from what you've lived, but at least you saw some voices as well in the streets all over the world calling for ending this war. And that is why, because some young people like this beautiful lady next to me is pushing the envelope and telling the people, and many people are being encouraged to follow her steps.
Let's talk about organizational approaches to truth and fact-checking. You're a VP of one of the world's great news organizations. You've been passionate in talking about fact-checking and validation. How do you approach, or how does CNN approach this? How do you talk to your team about it? And what kind of culture do you guys build up to be able to, hopefully, bring the truth across to your audiences?
Listen, the truth, we deal with any... If you talk about any coverage or any war or any case, we deal with it the same way, which is two well-informed sources. We have to listen to both sides no matter what. And if we see that anything that other members of the family is doing that is not fitting with what we have, and we don't have people on the ground, we don't take it. We look for the truth, we take and try to listen to the other side. And that is exactly what we followed when we were covering many wars happening in the region. And as you can, as everybody knows, that we don't have any boring time when it comes to wars in this region. So we're covering it all the time. So having it covered from both sides, but also it's important to listen to your team. I am very proud that I have amazing team that I can move mountains, literally with this team. And we have different nationalities from different places, including people that one of my team members, her grandparents are actually in Gaza in the north. And we heard a lot of things from her, and we were really informed about stuff that others were not informed because we have people on the ground. So we covered the story from all angles, but as I said, we listen to the team, we listen what they want, and we don't force them to do something that they're not convinced of. And I always tell my team, if any time you're not happy with and you don't want to do something, you want to resign, I'll be the first to resign. You want to sign petition, I'll be the first to sign petition. But guess what? We survived until now, and I've been working with my team for 24 years.
And you're an institution in your own right. Your name, your followers, your Instagram handle, and everything you're doing. As you continue to grow and become more of a global media personality that people want to pay attention to, how will you create what we described earlier, a system of, if you'd like, fact-checking and truth to be able to continue to appeal to that global audience?
So I always make sure to amplify people's voices and to not speak over them. So for example, whenever I want to post about what's happening in Palestine, Gaza right now, I'm no longer physically there. So I always make sure to talk to people on the ground, use their pictures, give them credit for pictures, for quotations, and tell their stories, and they will tell me what they're witnessing and what's happening. Even when I wanted to post about Sudan or Syria, I always post on my story, okay, what are the sources that you guys know? What are pages that you trust, that you follow? And I try to double check and to make sure to listen to the people, the Sudanese people, because I don't know what's happening in Sudan better than Sudanese. I can't know what's happening in Syria better than Syrians. So I always make sure to let people feel that they can speak and I can amplify their voices, not speak over them.
Academia has been on fire. I mean, we saw all of the quad demonstrations going on, university presidents either being fired or being forced out or resigning, on a big debate around what is the truth. How do you see academia in that kind of environment moving forward?
Well, again, I think academia, like many other institutions, are being challenged fundamentally because of what we are contesting as the common language that represents all of us, within which we can dialogue, within which we accept its premises. And now there is a crisis. And this crisis is not just now. I think it's been building up. I think it went full-blown right now. About this system of truth and whether we feel that these big systems, these big international organizations that speak of rights and so on truly represent us, or whether they are practicing what they're preaching and so on. So I think there is a real crisis since, I would say, after the Second World War that we are living today. And I think we are trying, here in the region, we talk about, we want something that represents who we are in the region or the global south and so on. So there are a lot of attempts to take control of representation. Obviously this is what Plestia and people of her generation are doing, and I think that's very important. So I think what's happening in academia and these big institutions is precisely this crisis of confidence, and rightfully so. But I think it is very dangerous to give up on institutions, because I think our conversation here, any conversation about truth, it is truth in relation to a community in which you are living. And that community is national, international, universal. So we have to find ways where we agree on certain things. We can't just each see things totally different. You have the right to do that, but eventually, in order to come together or come up with a certain modus vivendi, you need to agree on some basic principles that you feel are fair and just. And I think the crisis we are in is also an opportunity to rethink what are these new bases of what we think is fair and just for everyone.
You have unique insight. You're teaching at Dartmouth, you're teaching at the AUB, two great universities, but very, very different, with a different approach to life. How would you compare those systems of truth and the dialogue happening among faculty and the ethical compact of each university? Are they similar, heading in the same directions? When you're at Dartmouth, do you hear the same conversation at AUB or not?
Yeah, I mean, AUB, although it is an American university, but it is in Beirut. It is the Beirut that also was besieged in the 80s, and it's a place that is at the forefront of, war and catastrophes in this region. So, and the people there understand the stakes. I mean, and you don't have some romanticized idea of what is happening in that part of the world when you are far away. So no matter how well-meaning you are, and even how great progressive politics you have, you're also seeing things sometimes through your, what you wish things to be, rather than what they actually are. And again, this comes back to representation and reality, and this question of truth. So I do think people there, they have no illusions about where they are and what are the politics on the ground and how they are dealing with them. So that could mean many things, right? I mean, they could be much more cynical about certain causes and politics in ways that maybe my colleagues at Dartmouth are not, you see? But I think being present is really very important, and I think that's why I think this new media, these voices of presence, of instantaneity, have so much credibility in ways that these forms of mediation open rooms for all kinds of manipulation and misperception.
Thank you. Well, why don't we pause and take the first few questions? That way we're not waiting until the very end, and we can make it a little bit more interactive. If we can have our first 3 questions of the afternoon for our panel on anything you've heard that has captured your imagination or that you'd like to engage on, please raise your hand and ask away. Gentleman on the right.
Over here.
Hello. My name is Ajay Dayal. I'm a writer. An interesting discussion that's going on. But the question about truth is something which is not really being addressed here. Because what is the truth? Is what CNN telling us the truth? I don't know. I'm not sure about it. The problem is that societies have become so divided that they all have alternate truths that they want to hear and that they listen to. And when you say something is true, it may be true for you or for your point of view, but it doesn't necessarily sound true, or it is not necessarily true for the person who's looking at an alternative truth. That's the challenge right now. How do we address the alternate truth that people are now living with? The problem is society has been so biased with the Western media that we began to think that everything the Western media is saying is true. And very often they were honest in terms of the approach that they had, but very often they weren't. And we know it. So how do you address the alternate truth?
Alternate truth. I think a certain president came up with that term. Do you want to take that?
Sure. Well, the beauty of this truth that you're looking for, that you're free to pick and choose whatever you believe is truthful. And thanks to the new technology and the media that is all over the world, and it's now in your hand. So you don't need to believe CNN, BBC, Sky, whatever. You have the freedom to pick and choose whatever you want. And that is the beauty of the technology and the time that we're living in. In the old days, for those who are from this region, We used to hear our story only from the state-owned television, right? That's it. And wait for the radio station also, which is most of the time you listen to the Arab word. But now, surprise, surprise, it's a global village. You can pick and choose whatever you want. You can also follow somebody who is on the ground, who's not a journalist, who's not into media, doesn't belong to anybody, but telling the truth. And that is something.
Is your answer, Caroline, find your own way, do your own homework? Is that the answer?
Not only that, you have in your hand millions and millions of sources. You pick and choose whatever you think it's truthful. So it's not, we got used to them sometimes to, some people they are used to that what they're fed with, that this is the truth from a president or a father or a grandfather or a media platform. The answer is no, this is not applicable anymore. You pick and choose whatever you want from whatever resources you have. Don't believe me, don't believe anybody here. Believe what you believe it's useful and this is truthful. And that is something that I personally feel so happy that I lived until I saw this is applicable. That's me. Although I'm 25 and holding, as you know.
I don't know. I mean, I'm very invested in institutions. We need to build institutions. We need to find common grounds. It's very important. And, you know, and I think we have a crisis in the world because there are no large notions of community that we can all connect with and feel they represent us. And we need to find these notions of community. We had that a little bit after the Second World War. They were not perfect and they were unjust in many ways. But there was some idea and buy-ins, true buy-ins in these institutions. And I think we can't go into some chaotic world where all institutions by definitions are suspect and oppressive and so on. Because there's nothing for us outside of the institution. We would have no rights. We would have no passport to move. I mean, we are represented through institutions, through the papers we carry, through the languages we speak, through the disciplines we learn. So we're constantly, you know, we're not just who we are as some absolutes. You know, we are embedded fundamentally in where we studied, where we come from, what opportunities do we get, and so on. So we need to work very hard on finding common language so we can truly get to the point where we begin to dialogue. So, and that's, I think, the important part, and we should not give up on that and just simply say condemn the institutions as being kind of this oppressive structures and the institutions of journalism as being just simply complicit, because I mean, you need to send your kid somewhere to study journalism as well, to understand how to write a paper, to adopt certain ethical standards that other people also think are ethical. So
the answer to the gentleman's question, you're saying use your mind, use your freedom.
Pick whatever you believe in.
Go to the sources you believe in. And Professor, you're talking about the importance of institutions which can bring people together and create consensus on fact, right? I'll let you catch your breath for a minute. Do we have another question? The lady in the front, and then the lady in the back in blue.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So Caroline, I was just wondering, when there was just a state-run TV channel, I think the concept was more binary. There was truth and there was lies. So as we have more TV channels, more news sources, and the social media, truth is there, but we now have sophisticated words for lies. So alternate reality is a sophisticated word for lies. So, you know, if you would ask the question, are children being killed? Is it yes and no? This is binary. There can't be alternate reality to kids being killed.
That one's for you. Would you like to clarify your question just a little bit?
It's a comment more than a...
It's more of a comment that as we've evolved in terms of having more news sources, we've moved away from the binary concept.
Right. So there's not just one point of view and an opposing point of view. There are many points of view. Yeah,
so like Plestia said, when she was growing up, she would believe her parents for what was the truth, right? So we grew up in a binary concept of truth and lies. Now we are being told, yes, truth and lies.
There's something in between.
Believe what you want. And
shady place, huh?
All right. Thank you for the comment. The lady in the back.
Hi, my question is to Plestia and Tarek, and it's about the new generation that we're bringing up. My children are half Lebanese, half English, and they're studying in London. And obviously they have a keen interest in what's happening in the region, in their own home country and in Palestine. And I think we can all agree that for the new generation, mainstream media is dead. There is absolutely no trust and no interest whatsoever. But also the social media channels that they're following, they're creating, I think most of us are, creating a world in which we're watching content that we're interested in and can relate to. And so that's a world that we're creating that potentially has one side of the view. I think, Caroline, you mentioned that people have a choice and they can choose what truth to follow. But my question is, do we really have a choice? And in raising the next generation, especially with children traveling and living and from different parts of the world, how can we responsibly guide them to really find a balance between the truth and make up their own mind?
Personally, I do believe that we do have a choice because there are like millions of accounts on social media and you get to choose what accounts to interact with, what accounts to follow, what accounts you want to mute, unfollow, or basically block. And I believe when it comes to children in specific, like parents do have a responsibility and a role to watch what their children are watching online and who are they getting influenced from.
Thank you for that. Caroline, strong statement there saying effectively mainstream media is dead. What's your point of view on that?
It can be, yeah. That's why you see the mainstream media we used to say, for example, people need to come to the platforms and to watch TV and all that stuff. But now everybody is saying, I want to come to you. That's why you see all media platforms are actually appearing and they have their handles on social media. So if you want to reach to the people and you reach to the audience and to increase and make use of this amazing global village, you have to reach to the people. But also reaching them is not the end of the mission. You really need to know how they're reading it and also to listen to them. I think one of the challenges we face in general, but with more focus in this part of the world where I come from, I'm Jordanian, that we don't have the ability sometimes, or we're not interested to listen. Listening to the audience is vital. To build your assumption that X, Y, Z likes what I'm doing, that is an assumption that it will end up in the wrong direction. I always believe that listening to the audience is very important, and also being able to admit that you're wrong is also very important, because people sometimes they will come that they will know that you were wrong. So you have to admit from the beginning. But just to follow up on what the doctor was just saying, I truly believe that we really need to invest in educating the young generation with whatever we believe it should be done, like fact-checking, also technology, AI. But what AI? If you look at the AI that we have in our hands now, it's all done outside the region, okay? It's good to have. But do we have anything that is made in this region yet to nationalize it? So you know that your information that you're doing is staying in this region or not? The answer is no.
Well, we'll talk about AI in a moment. There was a broader point which I'd like to raise to all three of you. The gentleman and then the lady talked about the decline of trust in mainstream media, and specifically about Western media, which, whether we like it or not, has been the driving force of global journalism up until recently. That decline, there's CNNs, BBCs, A, do you agree that they are in decline? And B, what do you see emerging as either a counterweight or in a complementary fashion, or maybe even a replacement? And I'd ask that you not think about the platform. Who cares about whether it's on antenna or cable or social? Let's focus on the content from an institution. So I see CNN as an institution of journalism which has content, whether it's on TikTok or on TV. Let's try to focus on the brand, the organization. Are they really in decline in your mind? And if so, what are the other sources which you feel are challenging them? Why don't we start with you and then the professor?
Personally, I believe after the genocide that happened in Gaza, a lot of people, if not millions or thousands of people, lost the trust in Western media outlets because of the terminology and the bias and the way they report on the news. For example, I believe maybe most of the people in the room, they saw the story of Hind Rajab and how she got killed. We all know that Hind Rajab is a child, but when Western media outlets reported on Hind Rajab, many of them, one, failed to even mention her name, mention her age, mention anything about her. And there were some media outlets that even called her a woman, thinking if they're calling her a woman, then what is done is excused, even if she was a woman, not a child. Does that mean it's okay to kill her? Of course not. So I believe it's the way the Western media outlets report is what made them decline or made people lose the trust in them. And specifically, not only in the context of Gaza, even the context of news that are coming out of the Middle East. We saw a lot of independent journalists reporting, and with these independent journalists, you just know they're not following any agenda, they're just reporting what they're seeing, and they're showing us. That's why there was belief in them more than belief in institutions, because sometimes an institution, you feel like there's a certain agenda that they're following.
Yeah, I mean, this is, if you look also at the history of media in the region, I mean, if you look at the Jazeera effect as well, which is very important here, was to counterbalance, sorry, Caroline, but also CNN, or to kind of create the local version of these, you know, Middle East-based, Arab-based kind of organization that can give you a perspective from this part of the world. And of course, you know, the American invasion of Iraq in 2003 was the kind of moment for this. We need to own our representations and not just be represented by the outside. But that's still an organization and an institution that is in dialogue and reproducing, and actually hired a lot of people who did work at BBC, at CNN, and so on, in order to kind of repatriate this perspective. So I feel like it is very difficult to step outside of this kind of model of journalism if we really want to bring a lot of, you know, if we want to bring buy-ins and also be able to teach journalism or some guidelines about, you know, I mean, you're at AUB now doing a master's in journal and media studies and so on. So we're, you know, we are dealing with these institutions whether we like it or not. It's a very difficult kind of, it's a constant negotiation. It's never like I accept you fully or I reject you fully, but I have to negotiate with these institutions that give us also the voice, or that also have shaped the way we think about questions of truth and media and so on. So challenge, but also engage. And this is, I think, the difficulty. But I think this is the necessity. Because otherwise, you know, to come back to the kids, you know, the new generation, I mean, I think the new generation also, many of them, they don't want any discomfort. Like they want to listen to the people that reflect who they are or that they agree with. Or, you know, I mean, so the question of discomfort, this question of what makes you feel uncomfortable or anxious, you want to eliminate that as well. And that could be problematic at times, because you want to be sometimes challenged in an effective and productive way. But what is that effective and productive way that is not manipulative, that is not racist, or that is not really suppressing the other? This is the question. So there's a lot of work to be done. I think there are no simple answers for how to deal with these things.
You're on the hot seat.
No. Actually, the more the merrier, actually. It's always healthy to have more media outlets, and especially media outlets from the region to the region. But at the same time, we have to deliver our messages as well to the West. We cannot just talk to each other because we know each other. We have to talk to the West. But at the same time, don't forget the number of Arabs who are now part of these media outlets. I'm very proud. Me and my team, and we're all Arabs. And we're very proud that we are Arabs and working for a brand like CNN. And the numbers are not showing that there's a decline, by the way, because we believe in number. But that's a different story. But if you also look at the social media and what's happening, if you take Gaza as an example, nobody is on the ground. And we all know that we've been all signing petitions, we filed a case, several cases, and we are confronting lots of officials, asking them why we're not on the ground. And the answer is always, we want to protect you. We know how to cover wars. And this is actually part of one of the promos that Christian Amanpour is leading. But on the other side, we have also lots of voices, like your voice and many voices from within Gaza that we were able to take and depend on. And that proved that you cannot, we are a platform that we bring voices. So the more voices we have on the ground, the better it is. And that gives you also more choices on your mobile to pick and choose whatever it's
well, here's a number that may interest all of you and the audience. There was a study which was done on the top 100,000 posts which are about political or hard news-related items on TikTok. And 53% of them were reshares of traditional mainstream media titles like CNN, New York Times, Bloomberg, and so on. So if you're not talking about dancing cats and football and the rest of it, a lot of mainstream media is being reshared on social media and is actually the biggest driver of discourse around news on social media. So while we're thinking about mainstream media, quote unquote, dying or in decline, the facts will show that actually it is a key driver of news distribution on social media. So I would not rush to thinking that CNN is going down and that Caroline will be retired on a beach in the Maldives anytime soon. But let's open up to a few more questions in our remaining time. I'm sure there must be quite a few of them. The gentleman in the front, and then two more over there, and the lady on the left.
If there is such a level of, sorry, my name is Roger, I'm a lawyer in England. If there is such a level of distrust of the Western media in particular because of the many influences impacting upon it, is the way forward increasingly to rely upon the so-called citizen journalist? But if that is right, next question, how do news regimes in general, or the public wanting to hear what's going on, deal with a scenario where the level of suppression of any information coming out at all, whether it, I'm not going to name countries, but regimes, switch off the internet and stop telephone contacts, for example, getting out. What's the way forward in that scenario, which is even more challenging again? I don't know if there is an answer, but what's the best way to deal with it?
Caroline.
She's a citizen journalist.
Yeah, let's start with you. You know, if there's distrust in Western media, what about citizen journalism as an alternative? But in some places, citizen journalism is suppressed. So what's the way forward?
I have to tell you something. I feel very proud personally working for CNN that we started the citizen journalism, I report, way before social media. And it became an important platform, a page that we were getting lots of scoops as well, because people trusted us, but of course we have to go through lots of verification. But we started something called I Report, and it was really booming. And we trained people also how to report whatever they're able to see. But of course, to keep in mind that they're able to see from their angle as well. And that, when social media started, we felt there's no need to keep this page, and then we stopped it. But now, as you can see, that when somebody is not able to be on the ground, then you have to depend on these people. You have to depend on anything that can give you information as much as possible. We use technology to zoom in and do some investigative reporting based on using Google and technology to verify if this is truthful or if there's any movement. Like Shireen Abu Akleh, God bless her soul, we were able to do an investigative reporting that took us about 2.5 months or 3 months using hundreds of staff to verify who killed her. And it was obvious who killed her, and we announced that openly and clearly that she was shot by an Israeli soldier. So this was done with using the technology because we were not able to be on the ground at that time. So thanks to the technology, but I go back to the same point. We have to have our own technology from the region to be able to serve the region.
Thank you.
Personally, I believe that it's up to each individual where do they want to get their news from. Either it's citizen journalists, either it's the platforms, the new media, TV, radio, who to follow, who to trust, and who to question. And I feel like where you get your news from in general says a lot about you, because where you get your news from shows why you stand for the things you stand for in general, and why are you taking this side, not that side, and it shows how much information you have. Personally, I try to always get my news from different sources, and sometimes I do read the news in French, even though I don't understand French, but I will translate it to English to read it, just because I want to see, oh, how do French outlets cover about Gaza, for example. So I try to have like diverse sources just to expand my horizon and see how different media outlets use different terminology and report differently.
We have the next question.
So one of the biggest concerns with media and journalism and all of it is not just the truth as facts, but the interpretation of those facts, the story that is woven. And this is where you have words that become different, where we rebrand a genocide as a conflict, or we rebrand a child as a woman. And that is one of the biggest problems with institutions, whether it is, big names in journalism, or whether it is platforms that can decide to shut down an account because they don't like what that account is saying. Knowing that, and knowing the concerns that come with institutions of being able to say, don't use these words. And I think it was the BBC or The Guardian, I can't remember, who said they were told not to use specific words in their reportings. How can we trust institutions or build institutions that are trustworthy when we don't have that transparency, or when we have those concerns that are, what is the narrative that is being pushed? Because the same numbers are being taken and interpreted.
Professor can go first, and then Plestia.
Okay, I just have one sentence. Personally, I don't believe that we should trust anyone blindly. Either this person is an independent journalist, or this is a media outlet, so we can always pick and choose. For example, there are a lot of channels that I don't agree with the terminology and the way they report on Gaza, but I can agree with how they report on Sudan. So I can trust some of their reporting and not all of their reporting. There are a lot of journalists, even from Gaza, I don't agree with all the approaches that they do, or how they call things, or how they cover things. But I can choose what parts of the reporting to trust and what other parts not to trust. So I believe that trusting fully or completely either a person or an institution is a bit challenging.
I agree. I don't have much to add. I think
All right, then we'll use the time for another question. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi, my friend and I actually have very similar questions, so we're going to be asking them back to back, if that's okay. Thank you so much for the conversation. It's very insightful. I'm curious about the way we were discussing how we have so many different resources at the palm of our fingers. It's very easy to access information, and we have a responsibility to check our sources. However, I find that the algorithm deeply troubles that, and I don't really understand how we can have radical agency when the algorithm is filtering through the reality that we're seeing on social media. So I'm very curious about your thoughts on that, and my friend Noura has a follow-up question.
Hi, also thank you very much. The follow-up question regarding that is, with a lot of youth getting their information from social media now, and like Tala said, we of course have the responsibility to go and check, as you said. But when you're reporting, how do you think about the fact that a lot of people are stuck in echo chambers? And that, let's say you're trying to communicate the truth about what's happening in Gaza and the genocide, you find yourself speaking to an echo chamber. Are there ways that, knowing that the algorithm functions the way it is and affects the way we consume information, the way your audience consumes information, do you have ways to break through that, expand your audience, reach new audiences that you take?
Wonderful question, Professor.
No,
it's your turn. Go ahead.
The algorithm is yours.
One thing I genuinely believe in is that people are far way more powerful than any algorithm. For example, if you want to post a thing about Gaza and the world wants to see it and people are engaging and sharing and liking and commenting on it, then no matter how shadow banned it is, even if Instagram Meta decided to take it down and you post it again and people chose to engage with it, then it will reach people. And we can clearly see that from like my Instagram account and the accounts of like hundreds of Palestinian journalists journalists or even just citizens from Gaza, suddenly their accounts over like a couple of months, they had millions of followers. And why do they have that? Because the people chose to engage with their content and share it and show it to the world. So even when Meta decided to take a lot of posts down, people decided to engage and share. But yes, I do understand how challenging the algorithm can be and how you always need to find your way around it. Okay, not post the blood, not post this word, not do this, not do that. Like, yes, there are some small things that you can always try to do. But personally, what I always rely on is people's engagement, because it's the only thing that can fix the algorithm or any type of shadow ban, really.
Did you want to follow up on that?
No, I mean, I think what we're seeing emerging here is that, you know, what seems to be a chaotic scene is actually not so chaotic. It has rules of engagement, as Plestia is saying. And I think, how do we translate those into guidelines that could be taught and engaged with in order to reach, you know, a more fair representation of what is happening in the world around us?
Over there.
Thank you. Knowing that truth is shaped through identity and fear and memory and, of course, algorithms, my question is, what quality and what responsibility do we have to bring a certain caliber of consciousness into our relationship with truth?
I love that question, and I think it's a very, very important one.
I mean, you know, what I was saying earlier is that truth functions within a system. There's no something called absolute truth. And usually truth is based on a system where citizens have to live in transparent societies, so they know how to decide when they vote, when they interact, and so on. And today, I think information, and whether it's truthful or not, and so on, doesn't have the effect of enlightening you and making you aware. So it's not only working on your intellectual mind or rational mind. It is working on your feelings. It's working also on your emotions. So there is a certain thing you see or you learn and you're moved. You're moved, you want to do something about it. You want to. So, and that, I think, has to do with the new media in which the new media environment we're in. We're on our phones, we're checking sometimes the news in the middle of the night. I mean, we comment, we engage in ways that are not always this kind of rational, reasonable, intellectual engagement, whether this is, so we're not reading it as truth necessarily, we're reacting to it. And that is both good and bad. It's good because we are shocked and we want to do something and we want to change the world. But also, you need to balance between the emotional and the intellectual. You can't just be in one place only, because then we can't have a common language, and we need to develop these common languages and guidelines so we make sense to each other.
One thing here. And it's a shared responsibility for everybody, not only journalists, researchers, professors, everybody. Even mothers, schools, universities, everybody is responsible with it. Because for you to be able to know the truth, you need to be part of the formula, if you like, that is also telling the truth. I might be looking for a truthful information in a place where you are there, and that's not your job, but you have to take action. Because sometimes we face a reality called anomaly, or it's none of my business. But I don't think that we have the time now for anomaly, because everybody should be involved, and this is something that we have to be engaged, because we share the same responsibility. And responsibility comes also with accountability.
We're at time. I'm going to try to distill what you've all mentioned in a few very interesting and intelligent comments from our audience. There is this continuing perception that Western media has been dominant and has been unfair to our part of the world. And there's a widespread belief that Western media is no longer trusted and is on the decline. However, science and research are showing that Western media continue to drive a lot of engagement on key social media platforms, even among the people who criticize it. And perhaps there's a bigger ecosystem here beyond the world of media that we need to be thinking about. That maybe some of the Western media are looked at, whether you believe them or not, because they do come from an environment where there actually might be a bit more freedom to say things. So maybe we should not be that quick to dismiss traditional Western media like CNN. Maybe there's something more to it, and maybe we need to be more judicious in how we look at that kind of information. I think another interesting point that struck me listening to everyone is how we talk about truth and we tie it so much to the media. And I go back to your point. What about our fathers, our mothers, our schools, our mosques, our churches, our communities? There's more to truth than the media. And to your point, the lady who asked the question about a higher consciousness, there is a community element here, a local community element, a global community element that has to be brought into the equation. And we can't just think about it from a media point of view. We need to think about that intersection of everything, media, community, society, and so on. But what really struck me, and it's my final point, would be we talked about truth, we talked about it being perhaps fungible, people have an alternative reality, and so on. But every time we came back to, well, how do we get to what's right? We talked about principles. We talked about personal responsibility. Use your mind, be educated, be enlightened, as you said, Professor. Share. In my opinion, talk to your enemies. So there is a future here that we are trying to understand. How do we get to the future of truth? Maybe we'd never get to the future of truth if we focus on the truth element on its own. But maybe we focus on how can we head in that direction. And clearly it's down to principle, righteousness, and community, which may be a little bit easier to define. If I want to help someone because they're in trouble, that's the truth. That's the ultimate truth because it's so simple. And while it's been so difficult to talk about how do we define the truth, how do we get to it, is it from the media or is it not, I remember a verse from the Quran which says, أَلَا إِنَّ الْحَقَّ بَيِّنٌ. The truth is simple. It's obvious. And I think we can overthink it, but we also need to remember that it is actually quite simple when you actually go back to the principles around what makes it true or not. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a wonderful round of applause to our panelists. Thank you. And our thanks to our sponsors. I wish you all a lovely evening. The weather is beautiful, and enjoy your continuing participation at ELF. Thank you.